Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jodi Harrison Bauer, and welcome to the show. If you are a new listener, welcome. And this is the place where you get educated, empowered from that education, a little entertained, and inspired to live a fearlessly authentic life, because I spent way too much time being afraid to take risks on myself, the fear of judgment, and to step really firmly in my truth. And it's not always easy. And that's why I created this show, so you can listen and learn and maybe laugh a little bit too. So welcome, everybody. I can't wait to share my guest with you. We're going to learn so much today. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We have a 5-star rating. You can find us also on YouTube. All of my social platforms are at Jodi Harrison Bauer. And I think that is it. So we are going to get right into the show. I have Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin. Welcome to the show, Nina.
Great to be here, as always.
I love having you here. I always learn so much from you. And you just, you inspire me to always live the most fearlessly authentic life, no matter what I'm doing. So for those of you who do not know Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin, she is a psychoanalyst, author, and radio host, a globally recognized expert in the field of eating disorders. She has written 4 books and more than 50 articles. She hosts the Dr. Nina Show, Outsmart Emotional Eating on LA Talk Radio, and the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina on Voice America. She founded the Binge Cure method and is dedicated to helping people worldwide overcome binge eating and heal their relationship with food. That's pretty to the point, Nina. I wanted to ask you, can you tell us more about the Binge Cure method you founded and how it helps people overcome their binge eating or other food disorders?
Absolutely. So the problem that most people have is that they focus on food as the problem, right? They think, oh, I have no control, I have no willpower, I'm a food addict. And they keep focusing on changing their relationship with food by focusing on food. And that is like plucking a weed and hoping it won't grow back, right? You have to get to that root to get rid of a weed. And similarly with food issues, you've got to get to the hidden reasons where it like the root, which is hidden from us. We can't see it. It's in the ground. There are thoughts that we have that we're in the dark about. They're unconscious and hidden. And by recognizing that and also learning new ways of responding to ourselves, learning to identify our why instead of focusing on what. I like to say it's not what you're eating that's the true problem, it's what's eating at you. And then how do you identify that? Those are the hidden things. Learning to identify that. And then learning to express yourself in a different way and learning to comfort yourself in a different way. We live in a culture that says, don't feel your feelings. So what do people do when they have feelings? Well, there's a reason that we have an epidemic of addictions or, eating disorders or workaholism or gambling or, what have you. All these are ways of coping. And so the Binge Cure method is really changing your entire relationship with yourself, which then changes your relationship not only with food, but with other people, with your world.
Right. And as you mentioned, other people may go to gambling or porn or alcohol, drugs, whatever it might be, but it's really not about that. Food is similar to that, right?
It's a way of coping.
Mm-hmm.
I co-edited a book called Beyond the Primal Addiction, and every chapter was called addiction. I don't think of it as, I don't like the idea of food addiction. I don't agree with that. If anything, it's an eating addiction. You're not addicted to actual food, even though many people, that's very controversial. And many people will say, yes, I am a food addict, and get very upset when I say this. Okay. Oh, well, a lot of people come to me and say I'm a food addict, and they leave going, oh, I was never a food addict. But the point is, with the book, it's all these different addictions, food, sex, shopping, internet, gambling, all of these things where people can get addicted to. And when we're addicted, people will point to, well, it lights up certain areas in your brain. Anything that's pleasurable lights up those areas of our brain. So these are all coping strategies of how to deal with the feelings and situations that come up in our everyday lives that we are not taught to deal with. We're taught not to think of something positive, think it away. Don't just look on the bright side. It could be worse. All of these things that we are told, which basically is so dismissive. And so then how do we learn to identify and process our emotions, which are they're just reactions to situations, not character flaws.
I remember talking to you about this before, and you mentioned, it just really stuck out in my mind that when a child cries, for example, they hurt themselves at the playground. I think that was your example, something similar to that. And the mom or the caregiver immediately says, here's a cookie, here's some ice cream, because they want to distract them from what they're feeling. I believe that's what you said, where the real problem is that they fell down, they hurt themselves. So can you, explain that in more detail, please?
Yeah, well, I will explain that, and then I will explain my own experience with my own daughter, which I did everything wrong, and then I realized that I was doing everything wrong, and I'll actually show how that relates to our emotional pain. But yeah, so I'm at the park, and my kid is playing with other kids, and there were these two little toddlers, and they were digging and playing and everything, little boy, little girl, and all of a sudden the little boy gets up and runs off with the shovel. So naturally, the little girl starts crying because, hey, we've all been there. You're having a good time, and suddenly the dude leaves with the shovel. So,
the shovel.
So here comes mom. Mom's like, don't cry, it's okay. Panicked, and she's digging in her diaper bag. It's okay. And the kid's crying because, of course, little dude left her alone took her shovel. And finally, mom's like, here, have a cookie. And I just thought, oh my God, that is the worst thing you could do, lady. And I really give myself credit for not saying lady.
Right. Jumping out right there and saying, let me help you here.
Yeah. But I realized, okay, later on, that little girl is going to grow up, and she's going to go on a date or have a bad experience where she wants to cry. And instead of saying, oh yes, this is hurtful, this situation is painful, of course I feel sad, I'm going to comfort myself with words and acknowledge and validate myself, that girl who's going to become the woman who says, oh, this is making me anxious, I better have a cookie. That, if I can't stop crying, a cookie will help.
Right.
And so that, and so the way that we are responded to sets the tone for how we later respond to ourselves. People who say, oh, you're fine, that's not that bad, even in a nice way. Oh, you're fine, you're good, that's not that bad. They learn to distrust their own experience, because if you're hurting and someone says, that's not that bad, you can't really trust your own feelings. Or if someone gets angry, stop your crying already, I'll give you something to cry about. Then you learn that your own feelings make other people angry. And then
or uncomfortable, right? So you're like, oh, I can't do that. I got to pull it back and find out some other way to soothe myself.
Yes. Ice cream won't get mad at me.
Right.
Or anything else.
I don't know if I ever shared this with you before, but, when I was in my first marriage, I found, because I was unhappy, I found myself shopping all the time. And that was my way of dealing with my unhappiness, my frustration of not being able to change something, not being in control of my relationship, because it was a two-way street. So if he wasn't working on it, I couldn't do it all myself. But what I could do is go shopping, whip out my credit card, buy all these clothes that I had no place to wear them to, feel that high, get in the car, drive home, open the bag and go, what did I just do? and then I would bring the clothes back. And I think that mirrors a lot of what you're talking about, but with eating.
Absolutely. And in my book, The Binge Cure, I talk a lot about how many people who, whatever is going on with food, they're doing the same thing with money. So many people, what you describe, I would call financial bulimia, right? You kind of binge on shopping and then you return everything.
Totally.
And some people binge on shopping and food and they don't return it. And we really want to look at, well, what are you buying? And it's like, it's the high, but it's also, are you buying things that kind of take up space in your home, which is like filling a void? Are you buying things that are going to make you look better? Like, some people only buy like makeup and things like that. Is it about
or
your
shoes or bags or things like that? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you wish you had a different life? Like, are you buying stuff for the life you wish you had?
Right.
Or just being really curious about, well, what is motivating that? And I think that's the point of the Binge Cure method and the way that I work, is that whatever is going on, there is a reason, and being really curious about that reason is everything. I want to just share the story about how I messed up as a mother.
Okay. I think I did that with my daughter once or twice with here's a cookie type of thing.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do it with the cookies, but what happened was she fell down, she skinned her knee, she came to me, she's crying. It hurts, mommy, it hurts. And I said, I did everything wrong. I said, you know what? That's not that bad. Mistake number one.
Right.
You're okay. Let's just get a Band-Aid. You'll be fine. Totally nicely dismissive. She keeps crying, but mom, it hurts. It really hurts. And then I went, oh my gosh, I'm doing the thing I tell everybody not to do. Shoot. So, although I didn't say shoot. And so I said, oh, now that I look at it, that does look painful. That looks really painful. That must hurt a lot. And that's when she stopped crying. She's like, yeah, now can we get the Band-Aid? So translate that to emotional pain, right? If you're in pain and someone says, it's not that bad, you're fine. You don't, it's not very satisfying. And if we tell it to ourselves, it's definitely not that satisfying. So we have to learn to say, wow, this really does hurt, or this is really upsetting, or this is really hard. Of course I feel bad. Of course I do. Like if the mother, with the little boy with the shovel, if the mom had just said, of course you're sad, honey. He just took your shovel and he left you alone. Of course you feel bad. You just cry it out. You're going to feel better now. But yeah, right now it's hurting your feelings. That would have been a great thing to say.
And I think that goes back to a lot of, what people are talking about now is, it's always been the case, but we didn't have the words necessarily to describe it, but being seen, being heard, that maybe in earlier generations, the way I was raised maybe was like, yeah, you just shoved it under the rug. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Get over it. Stop crying. Move on. And, it wasn't that harsh, but as we grow and we evolve and we learn and we educate ourselves with people like you, we learn to listen and make the people around us feel that they are being heard and they are being seen.
Absolutely. I was told, I'll give you something to cry about.
Oh,
yeah.
That's tough.
Like, as he's like ready with his belt, I'll give you something to cry about. Like, oh, so I'm committing some kind of a crime that I'm going to be punished for. So, and this message is then what do we do with our feelings, right? Then we feel bad. Just not only do we feel bad for having these emotions to begin with. And if we don't have a way of reliably comforting ourselves and soothing ourselves, we're going to use what works. And that may be food, that may be shopping, that may be whatever, as a way to give ourselves what ideally words would do.
Right. So what motivated you to become a psychoanalyst in this field?
Well, I mean, I've shared before my story of how when I was 5 years old, I suddenly thought that my thighs were too big, and I
would love for you to share that.
Okay, so when I'm 5 years old, I remember the exact moment. This is something I haven't actually shared, but I'm going to share it now. Where was I? I was at the tennis court. Why was I at the tennis court? Because my dad and some other woman that was not my mother were playing tennis together. And I'm fairly certain, had very skinny legs. So I'm at the tennis court and I look down and I suddenly got the idea that my thighs were too big. And that somehow
5 years old. 5 years old.
Five. Somehow I got the idea that if I were thinner, I would somehow be better. And this led into my eating disorder hell, so that by the time I was a teenager, I was just always on some restrictive, crazy diet. And eventually my willpower would fail and I'd binge and sometimes I'd purge. So I was the poster child for eating disorders because I had all of them. I would just go in a cycle: diet, restrict, binge, purge, diet. It just took over my life. Every waking thought seemed to be about numbers,
Right.
And then I finally went to therapy, but I went for anxiety, not for eating disorders, even though I was the poster child for eating disorders. And I talked about everything but food. I talked about guy stuff and family stuff and,
And that's
goals,
why you
all
went to,
that.
and that's why you went to therapy, because of the other things, right?
For anxiety. Well, for
Yeah.
anxiety, yes.
Right.
The anxiety was actually part of what was leading to the eating disorder, but I didn't even put that together.
Right.
I didn't even realize that. But after a while, I realized I wasn't doing these behaviors. And by the time I left therapy, all my eating disorders were gone for good. And not once, not ever had I ever talked about food. And people say, how is that possible? How do you get over 3 eating disorders without ever talking about food? And that's because food was not the problem. It was the solution to the problem, whether I was depriving myself of it or binging on it or binging and purging. It was the solution to the problem, which was my own harsh relationship with myself. And I was a perfectionist and nothing I did was good enough. And, I had no tolerance for my feelings, all kinds of things. And why, by the way, at age 5, did I suddenly have that? Besides the fact that my father was playing tennis with a woman with skinny legs. So my parents were college professors and they were very, serious, are very serious. And I was always being told, you're too loud, you're too sensitive, you're too dramatic, you're too much was the message.
Right.
And my 5-year-old mind took that concretely, like, oh, if there were less of me, maybe I'd be more lovable.
Wow.
And so this is what really showed me the importance of psychology, my experience in therapy, and then realizing later when I became a psychoanalyst, what had motivated me to look at those hidden reasons. And that's why I felt so just adamant about doing the work that I do, because so many people, they're tackling the wrong problem, right? They're looking at food as the problem. It's the solution to the problem.
So what are the underlying emotional insights that maybe you would look for when someone comes to you, if they're coming to you for maybe another reason? What can you share with us?
Well, at this point, and for almost as long as I've been doing this, everybody comes to me and says that they're a food addict, or they have emotional eating, or they have binge eating, every single person. But what they don't know is why. And so that's like the work that I do, is to help them figure out the hidden why. Often they don't even know. And when you don't know why you're being triggered or how you're being triggered, it's really hard to figure out what it is you can't, like, to know what you can't know. And so I have developed in my Binge Cure method various ways for people to recognize what it is. But also, one of the things I see a lot, not just with people who see me, is that we live in this society of, where we have this when-then trap. Right? Which is, with binge eating disorder, it's, well, when I stop binging, my life will be like this. When I lose weight, my life will be like this. But and that's the illusion that the diet industry sells us, right? Hey, if you just lose weight, if you're shy, you're going to be confident. If you don't have enough friends, oh, you're going to have so many friends. If you don't like your job, you're going to get a better job. If you're not happy, you're going to be happy. Like, as if losing weight will change your entire personality and life. That's the ultimate when then trap. The problem is we just lose weight and nothing changes but the number.
Right. It's like when somebody says, well, I'm not happy, I'm going to move across the country, or I'm going to move to another country, but all you're doing is bringing that baggage with you if you've never gotten to the bottom of it. Why are you doing this? Going back to my situation, it was, I knew that I wasn't happy in my marriage anymore. And guess what? I never go shopping anymore. It's not something that interests me. And it's like, it stopped dead on. And so I can talk about that now, 20 something years later, because I did the work on myself, but I had to figure it out myself. I had to stand back and figure it out. So when somebody comes to you and they say they have a food disorder, a food problem.
They'll say, I've got a food problem, or I'm a binge eater, or I'm an emotional eater, I'm a food addict.
And they say something to you and use the what then. I know that if I lose 50 pounds, that I'll have a better job, then I'll be able to meet somebody, because right now I'm not meeting anybody because I'm 50 pounds overweight or whatever, or 5 pounds overweight. So how do you dig deeper? That patient has to be very vulnerable and ready to open up, right?
I'm just thinking about someone who used to call my LA Talk radio show she called almost every week for a year. And I knew that other people were getting really frustrated with her, because she would say, I've gained 2 pounds and I can't stop thinking about these 2 pounds. And there are people there listening who are like, I need to lose 20 pounds or 100 pounds or whatever. But why did this woman, and she just called yesterday, and she's pregnant and she's about to have her first baby. And anyway, her life has totally changed. But what we discovered was that the 2 pounds for her made the difference between being lovable or unlovable. Her mother was very focused on the scale and was only focused on numbers, and her younger sister was thinner and sort of more favored. So for her, it's, what did those 2 pounds represent? You think 2 pounds, like the scale fluctuates 2 pounds no matter what, like
4 pounds, 6 pounds.
Devastating to her. But it was because of what it meant. It meant now her mother would not love her. I mean, right? So she consciously knew this was not true, but it's not logical, it's psychological. She felt it to be true. And so it's really the meaning of this weight. What does it mean to someone? What is it, what are their ideas about what life will be like if they do lose weight? Why did they gain weight in the first place? Because some people want to lose weight or stop binging, but they're also afraid to, right?
Because that's all they know.
Or because they say it protects them in some way. Like I once treated someone who was like 200 pounds overweight, and she said, I don't know who I'll be if I lose weight. And it was hard for her to imagine that she would be herself, just in a different body. Or a lot of people are afraid of a certain kind of attention. Yes. And so they keep themselves invisible by being not sexy, right? Being invisible.
And sort of insulating themselves, like literally insulating them from any hurt they may feel with the extra weight. I mean, I've had a few clients that have struggled with that, where they're like, well, I don't know if I lose 150 pounds, I don't know how that's going to feel. That's a little scary. And when I did lose weight in the past, I got a lot of attention from men. And I don't know what I would do now that I'm older. What would I'm not prepared for that mentally. So it's a very real thing. And I think people listening right now may think, what do you mean? But if you have struggled or know somebody, it's a very real thing, real fear.
Yes, being objectified, particularly people who've had negative experiences with sexual abuse or molestation, things like that. They're very afraid to be seen.
Yeah, and that does seem to be the situation with a lot of women that I know, um, including somebody that's very close to me, uh, that had that situation, and she did lose weight the wrong way with diet pills back in the 80s, and then put it all back on. And at this point, she just says to me, Jodi, this is how I'm going to be. Leave me alone. It's and that's it. So we are going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Dr. Nina. And so stay with us. Be right back. Welcome back to Fearlessly Authentic, everyone. I'm here with Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin, and we are talking about different types of, I know I'm going to say this wrong, eating disorders. You should say food disorders, right?
No, eating
I got it.
disorders.
Eating disorders, and her method for the binge cure. And what we were talking about before was the conversation that she has with a lot of her patients. What if I lose the weight or change something about what I look, about my appearance, then I will be happy then. And so I really want to delve deeper into that whole conversation, because as somebody who has been in the fitness industry for a very long time, almost every single client would come to me and say, well, I need to lose this weight so I don't look like that.
And then if you do look like that, what does that even mean? I mean,
Right.
the diet and the diet industry, which, by the way, this is an industry that is predicated on selling something that people will fail at. Because if it's a $60 billion industry, they're not
Very
really
true.
selling diets so that you can just diet and be done with it. They're selling diets because diets will
They
fail.
know you're going to
You gotta
fail.
take the next diet. And that's why it's a $60 billion industry. But it sells that illusion. Hey, when I lose weight, then I'm going to have the life I want. And when I get to that size, then I'm going to feel this about myself. Then I'm going to, it's that when then, just, and it's throughout our culture, right? It's like, well, when I have $1 million, then I'm going to know I'm successful, or or $10,000 or whatever it is for different people. When I get that car, I'm going to feel this way. So there's so many examples in which we are putting our happiness off for some future time that is based on something external, really, that
So
will change the way we feel.
So how do you work with somebody who comes in with that attitude? What then? How do you work with that patient?
I'd be more, I would never say, look, that is an illusion, and
I know you
sorry to
wouldn't, but
burst your
maybe you
bubble.
would.
Not the first time, maybe the second time. No, I would say, well, tell me more about the life you want.
Mm.
And let's look at other ways maybe that you can achieve that other than have weight loss, because it's seen as, oh, if you lose weight just magically, like what a superpower that would be. People say, oh, my boyfriend broke up with me, but I'm going to lose 20 pounds and get him back. Oh, really? Your boyfriend is that superficial that he would want you back if you lost 20 pounds? Like, what a
Right.
superpower that you think you have, that if you just change your body, that you can then change the way people respond to you. What an illusion that is. What a,
And what, right now with, we didn't discuss this before we went on the air, but with the Ozempic craze going on right now, there are a lot of younger people. I mean, it might span across the age groups, but I see it a lot in the 30 somethings that they feel that once they lose the 10, 15, 20 pounds with Ozempic, which is the magic pill that everybody's been searching for, then I will have success. Then I will be the most popular girl. Then I'll have success in all areas of life. Has that been something you've had to start dealing with in your practice?
It's the same. It's just different because it's Ozempic, right?
Mhm.
It's people having this thought of, hey, if I change my body, if I lose weight, if I can just get a handle on this, if I can stop binge eating, if I can stop emotional eating, if I can do that and lose weight. Not everyone who binge eats, by the way, has to lose weight or wants to lose weight. Most people do. That it's when this happens, when I change my body, then my life is going to change. So to answer your question, what I ask is, well, tell me about the life you want to have. You know, what is it? What would that look like? What is the difference between now and then? Because I would never want to shatter someone's illusion in the beginning that, hey, if you are shy and you think you're going to become more confident if you lose weight, I would never say you are dreaming, girl or guy.
Right.
So I see a lot of men. I would say, just what's wrong with being shy, or how does that affected your life, or why do you want to be different? Tell me about the life you want to have.
So what are some of the strategies that you provide your patients in dealing with a binge eating disorder, that if they want to eat at nighttime, for example, if you can share some of your strategies, which I think they're all in your book, The Binge Cure, which everybody who's listening, you need to go and get the book, because it's an easy read and it's full of lots of information. So let's go through some of the strategies that you commonly use to help. And I was also happy that you brought up men, because in my mind, I think it affects more women, right? But it doesn't.
It doesn't. I should also say that before I answer your question, and I just did a show here on Voice America, the Binge Cure with Dr.
Yay!
Nina show. And what was the topic? How to stop binge eating at night.
Oh, okay.
So listen to the show, but I'm
Yes,
going to
yes.
but most people think, oh, you just see, teenagers and people in their 20s. No, actually, almost everyone I see is in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, including men. And a lot of them have struggled for decades. And they've always thought that they lacked willpower, they lacked control, they were food addicts, whatever. And they've tried every diet. One person said, I've tried every diet in America. It doesn't work. And
I've heard the same thing myself from my
Yes.
clients. Yeah.
And so the first thing is to really look at the why. Why are you turning to food, especially at night? So in the day, we're busy, we're doing things, we're working, we're taking care of kids or grandkids or whatever. We're usually very busy and we're occupied. But at night, then we're not so busy, and that's when we are alone with ourselves. And when we are alone with ourselves, that's when thoughts and feelings that we may not want to think can creep in, such as, I don't really, like in your case, maybe I'm not so satisfied in my marriage, but maybe that's also a very scary thought. And so it's like, rather than think, oh, I'm not so satisfied in my marriage, it's, I want to eat some more cake I shouldn't eat the cake. I'm going to eat the cake. Oh my God, I ate the cake. I suck. I'm bad. Oh, I have no willpower. I'm not going to eat any more cake. I'm not going to eat anymore. I want another piece. I'm never, and that's all night, right? And since I had the cake, I might as well have the cookies, and I might as well have the leftover pizza, and I might as well order something else, because tomorrow I'm going on a diet and I'm never going to have anything again. So you create deprivation and you create distraction. So a lot of what we do is look at, well, what are you actually distracting from? That's the first step. Is it physical or emotional hunger? What's going on within you? What are you distracting yourself from? What are the thoughts and the feelings that are too frightening to get in touch with? When I first started as a therapist, I was a brand new therapist, and this was my very first group where the woman said, what does a skinny bitch like you know about binge eating?
Yes.
So one of the other people there, she insisted the whole time, I just really like food. I just have no willpower. I just like food. That's all. I just need to lose 20 pounds and then I'll be fine. I don't have a binge eating problem. I don't have an emotional eating problem. I just like food too much. On the last day of our group, maybe 20 minutes before the end of the group, she said, if I'm really honest with myself and this group, I think that if I were not thinking about the 20 pounds I need to lose and all the dieting that I'm doing, I think I'd want to leave my husband.
Oh, wow. Huge.
But it was so scary. She could only admit it to herself and to us 20 minutes before the end of the group. Right? It's too threatening. It is much easier to count calories, carbs, and fat grams and focus on what are you eating and what's your diet and all of these things than it is to go inward and look at what's eating at you.
Right. And I know that you talk about different types of food. I love talking about this with you, the crunchy, the soft. Do you want to get into detail with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to. My food mood formula secret that is no longer a secret because I'm talking about it all the time.
Yes, I love it.
I don't want it to be a secret. So about like 10 years into being a therapist for people struggling with eating disorders, I started noticing that there was a pattern. Like I had noticed it, and then I started really noticing it. And what I saw was that when they chose certain kinds of foods, it was related to certain kinds of moods. And so I realized that it was one of, well, actually 4 categories, but the 3 main categories plus candy. So it was smooth and creamy foods like ice cream or yogurt and things like that. Filling foods like pizza, pasta, muffins, things that kind of take up space within us.
Mhm.
Crunchy, anything that makes you crunch down hard. And then the last is candy that's not chocolate. So what does it all mean? So when we want ice cream or something smooth and creamy, what we're really craving is comfort. And the idea is that if that's your thing, you want to look at finding new ways of comforting yourself that doesn't involve eating. And filling foods, that's associated with filling a void, loneliness, boredom, filling some kind of void. You want to look at the holes in your life and find new ways to fill them. And crunchy, anything that makes us bite down hard, that's associated with forms of anger. So frustration, irritation, anger, rage, whatever, and to be able to express it without crunching it and then turning it on yourself. And people always say, well, what about chocolate? Like chocolate is, the thing, like what word?
Right.
Chocolate? Well, some of us only like chocolate with creamy centers or milk chocolate that fits the creamy, or dark chocolate or chocolate with nuts fits the crunchy. So it really does still fit the formula. And if you like candy, that's not chocolate, want to think about the sweetness in your life that you may be missing, and not the sweetness that comes from sugar, but the sweetness from enjoyment, fun, life, like the sweetness of life. You've got to develop an appetite for fun and for life.
That's interesting. So if somebody who's listening finds themselves, they're talking about, they're watching TV, they get up and they go to the chips and they're crunching. And they've heard this show and they're like, well, what am I angry about? What types of, what do they go, where do they take those feelings to deal with, oh, I'm not hungry? Because I know this is something that I've talked to my clients about. I don't say things like only eat when you're hungry. I don't say that, because I have a different way of suggesting how they eat, but it's not about, when you want to eat those things. I've always told my clients that after you finish eating something, don't immediately reach for the candy. This is different than what you're doing, but it is still that psychological part is wait 20 minutes and ask yourself, are you hungry?
Well, that is a great way of doing things if you don't have emotional eating.
Exactly. Right. That's if they don't have this. So if you have patients that are eating, they know they're not hungry, they're coming to you and they're like, okay, I'm eating ice cream every single night. Yeah. I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat it. It's actually making me feel kind of sick because I'm eating so much of it. How do they deal with that?
I will answer that, but first I got to say this, which is that the food mood formula secret, it only applies to the times when you're eating to resolve something emotional.
Okay.
It doesn't apply to, like, eating some chips with your sandwich is not the same as eating a family
Sure.
bag of Doritos and hating yourself with every bite. Like, those are two different things. So I'd say, okay, I think that the ice cream is telling us that you need comfort. What is it that you need comfort about? Like, what's going on in your life that you need to give yourself comfort? How do you comfort someone else? What do you think you'd experience if you didn't have that ice cream? What would you be in touch with? And to just start being very curious, like a detective. I call myself a detective of the mind. Let's solve the mystery of why you're eating ice cream every night.
You are.
Okay, it's ice cream. Is it just ice cream, plain ice cream, or does it have nuts in it? In which case, okay, you need comfort, but maybe there's a little bit of frustration there, annoyance. Like, if you couldn't be mad at yourself, who or what would you be upset with? What is it that's going on with you that's causing this need for comfort?
Okay.
And let's talk about that, because that's the true root. The ice cream is the solution. It's just not a great solution.
How does somebody know if they're binge eating?
That is a great question. So the difference between overeating and binge eating is we all overeat sometimes. Sometimes we don't eat enough during the day. And then when we start eating, it takes a while for us to know we're full. And we might just say, I had too much, I'll just cut down later, or I'll go to the gym extra time tomorrow, whatever. We don't get upset with ourselves, but it's just overeating, right? Binge eating. Some people say they binged if they eat 4 cookies. Some people, they say they binge when they eat 40 cookies. 40 cookies is more like a classic binge, but it's when you eat a large amount of food in a short amount of time, you feel kind of this frenetic sense of you can't stop, or you keep going back to the kitchen, every 20 minutes. You just can't stay out of the kitchen. You have this sense of like you want to stop, but you feel like you can't stop, and you feel like this food has a possession over you. And afterwards or during, you feel shame. You feel self-recrimination. You don't just say, oh, I ate too much. You say, what's wrong with me? Oh my God, this is horrible. If people knew, they'd be disgusted. You attack yourself. Binge eating is just a negative coping strategy, which is why it feels so powerful.
Right.
But it makes you feel bad about yourself.
So I want to go back to what we were talking about before the break about the fear of transforming your mind and your body, possibly, because do you talk about weight loss at all? Just curious from a healthy standpoint. Okay. Because the transformation of the mind and the body to a healthier place, because that's why they've come to you, and the fear involved with that transformation. How do you take somebody from where they are to that place?
By identifying and exploring their fears. There's this new thing in eating disorders that says you're not supposed to talk about weight loss. You're not supposed to want to you're not supposed to let people want to lose weight. You're supposed to promote body positivity. And you know what? If someone is like, I'm overweight and I don't care, I feel good about my body, great, good for you. But there are a lot of people who do not feel good about their bodies. They do want to lose weight, and I totally support that. I just don't support the idea that you'll be a better you when you lose weight. It's like the idea is, how can you be there for yourself and take your own side while you are working through the underlying issues that are causing you to turn to food or not let yourself lose weight. So yes, and we talk about the hope and the fear. There's the hope of, hey, I'm gonna go on more dates, and the fear is, oh, but if people reject me now, I can say it's my weight. I'm just making this up, but
no, I totally understand. No, that's a great example.
But if I lose weight and I get rejected, oh, it's actually me. Or big is powerful. I hear this a lot. Like, I once had she was 13 years old. She was extremely overweight. And she once poignantly said to me, nothing bad happens to fat girls.
Mhm.
And so she was very resistant to losing weight, because for her, losing weight meant putting herself in a position of being, in danger,
Right.
objectified, and something bad could happen to her, like all of this. So it's really looking at the reasons that people have the fear, which is usually the hidden part, is there along with the hope.
Right. So you mentioned developments in this area. Are there any other developments that are helping men and women become healthier?
Uh, we have
Like,
to, I'm not sure I understand.
yeah, no, like for emotional eating disorders, what you're talking about. Is there any progress? I mean, there are people like you talking about this and helping people. Are they talking about it more? You talked about the diet industry being a $60 billion business because they know people are going to fail. So have there been any developments that can help more people cure themselves?
No, I think
Mm.
things are actually getting worse, because now, in addition to yes, there are a lot of people talking about, like, weight bias or fat bias, or body positivity or health at any size and all of that. But that doesn't help someone who's like eating compulsively, because they want to lose the compulsion much more so than they want to even lose the weight. They want to stop binge eating. They don't want to, their focus isn't always on losing weight. Yes, they want to lose weight, but it's really the behavior that causes so much shame. So why I say things are getting worse is because we have this, yes, anti-diet culture is beginning to take hold, which is good, but it still doesn't address the main reason why people binge eat or do other addictions, which is our cultural prohibition against feeling emotions and being human. Our emotions are just what keeps us, connected to ourselves and each other. But we have a culture that says, oh, you have a feeling, take a pill. There's something wrong with you. That's the problem.
Right. And the shame and the guilt that goes along with feeling the way that they do, wanting to change and going back to the what them. So there's the what then, the shame, the guilt, there's so many emotions involved. And I am just so happy that you're helping so many people. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
They can go to Dr. Nina Inc., DrNinaInc.com, Dr. Nina Inc. You can find my shows. You can get access to my books, or maybe just one book. It's also available on Amazon. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at the Binge Cure, and that's my book account. And Dr. Nina Psychoanalyst is my main account. And I answer all my DMs personally. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you. Is there any bit of advice that you can leave us with if somebody, if somebody who's listening knows somebody who's struggling?
Yes. Don't talk to them about their weight. Don't be the food police. Talk to them about what they're experiencing, and talk to them about, like, what are they struggling with? What are their hopes and fears versus what are they doing with food?
That's great advice, because I think those of us who have people in our lives that we're concerned about, we don't know how to approach them. And that's great advice, because if we're not struggling, we don't understand what they're struggling with. So this entire episode has been incredibly helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yes. And we can also find your show on Voice America is called again?
The Binge Cure with Dr. Nina.
Yes, please go and listen to that. And Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin, thank you so much for being on Fearlessly Authentic.
Thanks for having me.
And until next week, go have the most fearlessly authentic week ever. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye, everyone.